Letter 41 of Young Americans Abroad, or Vacation in Europe, Travels in England, France, Holland, Belgium, Prussia, and Switzerland, edited by J.O. Choules. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Letter 41 Frankfurt. Dear Charley, we had no more pleasant day in our excursion than from Cologne to Coblentz. It will be long before I grew tired of the scenery at that fine old place. We walked about in the evening with our New York friends, and, though some parts of Coblentz are very filthy, there are some exquisite plots in it, and all the vicinage is beautiful. We took a pleasant stroll to the bridge which spans the blue Moselle with 14 arches. The city stands on a point of land formed by the two rivers, and hence was known to the Romans by the name of Confluentes. Drusus fortified this place and Ehrenbreitstein 13 years before Christ. Its population is short of 20,000, but there are also 4,500 Prussian troops at the fortress. This is one of the strongest military posts in Europe. Its fortifications have been the labor of long years, and the works here, united with those across the river, are deemed impregnable. I believe Ehrenbreitstein is called the Gibraltar of Germany. It mounts 400 cannon, and the magazines will contain provisions for 8,000 men for 10 years. The former electoral palace is now the government house, and presents a very noble appearance from the river. It is either stone or stuccoed with an Ionic portico, and with its wings is 540 feet front. All round this city the heights are strongly fortified, and, look where you may, you see means of defence. We here determined upon an excursion to Stollenfels, which is about 4 miles from Coblentz, and our party went in 2 carriages, the family of Mr. B. in one, and ourselves in the other. The ride was very pleasant along the banks of the Rhine, and through orchards and vineyards, the heights towering away over us all the way. We came to the village of Capellun, which is a poor little hamlet at the base of the lofty mountain on which stood the noble ruins of Stollenfels Castle, which has been most admirably restored, and is now the summer palace of the King of Prussia. The ascent is very steep, but the road is admirable. Carriages are not allowed to go up, and travellers are supplied with donkeys, of which we found plenty in waiting. Our party all obtained these patient beasts of burden, and I assure you that we made a funny cavalcade. I do think it would have amused you to see ladies, gentlemen, and boys, all escorted by ragged urchins, mounting the hill. The road has been made at immense expense, and winds along in the most romantic manner, giving you at every turn the finest views and catches of the river, up and down, while the walls are frequently at the edges of precipices, from 50 to 200 feet over the ravines below. The woods were in all their glory, and I never saw a finer day. On arriving at the castle we rang a bell, and the servant in livery appeared, a fine civil fellow he was. On entering we were all furnished with felt slippers, so that in walking through the apartments we might not injure the polished oak floors. This castle was the residence of Archbishop Werner, who at the close of the 14th century was devoted to alchemy. The old tower is an immense affair, and still remains, and is likely to remain for ages. The new parts of the palace have all been restored with constant reference to the original architectural style. We wandered from one apartment to another, perhaps going into 20 or 30 apartments, none of which were very large, and many of them quite small and cosy. We saw the bedroom of the king. Everything was plain, and the furniture generally made of oak or black walnut. His study table had pen and ink and paper upon it, just as if he had stepped out of the room. The Queen's apartments were very elegantly plain, and her oratory is as pretty a little thing as you can imagine. In all these apartments are fine pictures, and one is superbly frescoed with allegory and history. The room in which the Queen of England and Prince Albert lodged, in 1845, was shown us, and the state bed was still in it. The dining hall was finely ornamented with carvings, old armor, etc. But a room devoted to antiquities pleased us the best of all. Here were cups, bottles, and glass goblets of the earliest dates, some as far back as the 12th and 13th centuries, which had belonged to the emperors and electors whom I cannot recollect, there were so many. On the walls were the most precious mementos, and here we saw the swords of Marshal Tilly, Napoleon Bonaparte, the one used at Waterloo, Blücher and Murat, and the knife and fork belonging to the brave Hofer, the Tyrolese patriot, who was shot at Mantua. From all the windows of this gem of a palace we had the finest views of the river, and could see, from the gateway and platform, Coblentz, Ehrenbreitstein, and 11 different ruins of castles and convents. Directly in front of us, on a bend of the river, almost making a peninsula, was Lahnstein and its ruined castle; off to its right Braubach and the castle of Marksburg and Martin's Chapel; and on our own side the pretty village of Reuss, where was once the royal seat, and where the electors of the Rhine used to meet, or elect to depose the emperors of Germany. All around the castle of Stolzenfels are the choicest flowers and shrubs, and I wish some of my horticultural friends could have seen the moss, roses, and fuchsias in such luxuriance. We were sorry to leave the place, but the steamboat on the Rhine is as punctual as a North River boat, and we had to resume our donkeys, descend to the carriages, drive briskly, and were just in time to get on board a boat bound to Mayence. In going up the river we saw the palace again to great advantage, and whatever else I forget, this locality I shall keep in memory, I assure you. We again looked at Lahnstein and the ruins of St. John's Church, built in 1100, and saw a curious ferry, from the mouth of the Lahn over to Stolzenfels. It is made by 5 or 6 boats anchored off, and the ferry boat goes over, wafted by the tide. We then came upon Beaupart, an old place but strongly fortified, and having 3,000 or 4,000 inhabitants. A gentleman on board, who had been there, said it was quite an interesting place. Nearly opposite we were delighted with the ruined towers of the Brothers, as Sternberg and Liebenstein are called. They occupy the 2 summits of a rock, every inch of whose sides is sacred to vines. The story of the brothers who lived here you are acquainted with. Our next point of interest was the ruin of Thurnberg, or the Mouse, while not far above is another, called the Cat. The view here grows more sublime, and the river grows narrower, and we had a fine prospect of Rheinfels and the town of St. Goar. Rheinfels grows up from the river's edge, and is, indeed, the rock of the Rhine. The fortifications were immense, and this is the most wonderful ruin on the river. A confederacy of German and Rhenish cities broke up this fortress at the close of the 13th century, and long afterwards it was made a modern defence. Here the river seems pent up, almost, and just above St. Goar there rises from the water a lofty precipice, called the Lurley Rock. Nearly opposite a man lives, who, when the boat passes, fires a pistol, and a very singular echo follows, as we can testify. Not far above are 7 rocks, seen at low water, called the 7 Sisters. The legend says that they were hard-hearted girls, the Ladies Schonberg, who trifled with the affections of nice young men, and so got their deserts by being turned into stones. Still, at the right, we come to Oberwessel, and we all thought it among the sweetest spots of the river. Salmon are caught in nets here, from the rocks. A bend in the river shows us Schonberg, a fine ruin. This was the family spot whence the Marshal Schomberg of the Boyne originated. Just over the river is the noble Gutenfels. It was spared by the French, and occupied till 1807, but is now roofless. Kaub, on the left, is the place where Marshal Blucher crossed the river with his army, January 1, 1814. In the centre of the river is a castle called Pfalz, built about 1320, which was used as a toll house by the Duke of Nassau. I think it has been used as a state prison. On our right lies Bacharach, with its many towers, and the fine old ruins of Stahleck Castle. Off this place is a large rock, the altar of Bacchus, and when the rock is exposed, it is thought to be the pledge of a good vintage. The region is celebrated for its wines, and the grapes of the slaty rocks have a high musky perfume. A gentleman told me that Bacharach resembles Jerusalem in its aspect. Of course it must be in miniature that the resemblance exists. Here we noticed St. Werner's Church, a most superb ruin of florid Gothic. These lancet-arched windows are the admiration of all who pass by. Lorchhausen is a small place, and just away from it are the ruins of the castle of Nollingen. On the other side, or right bank, are the ruins of the old keep tower of Fürstenberg, destroyed in 1689. Here we enter on the region where the best Rhenish wine is produced. The Rheingau, or valley of the river, is divided into upper and lower departments, and from about Lorch, on the left bank, up to Biberach, are the choicest vineyards. On our right lay the ruins of Heimberg, and the restored castle of Sonneck. Then comes old Falkenberg, and near to it is the splendid Gothic church of St. Clement. All these fortresses were the abodes of wholesale highwaymen, and then might be made rich. Most of them became such nuisances that, at the close of the